Teenagers live to communicate. For them, the world of social media is fast and fun. For parents, it can be frightening. Hi, I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to this edition of The Issues. We all know about the awesome side of social media and how it's revolutionizing the way that we communicate, network, and share information. But our topic today focuses on the dark side, the dangers. Our target group is teenagers, the most digitally connected generation to date. Now, this program is for teens and for parents. We're going to talk about the dangers that are out there. We'll also discuss how parents can protect their teenagers who so desperately want to be trusted and to be given some privacy to express themselves. So we hope to open some eyes, provide some advice, and possible safeguards. So teenagers, listen up, and parents, pay close attention. There's a lot at stake.
For teenagers, it's all about communicating with friends. Facebook is big.
I have 2,100 friends on there.
174 friends.
1,111 friends.
220 friends.
500 friends.
700.
Friends? Are they really? Do you know all of them?
To be honest, no.
I haven't met all of them personally, but most of them, yes.
I don't let anybody that I don't know be my friend.
I know majority of my friends. I feel that it's much safer if you add people that you know.
Do you think it's dangerous to have that many friends that you don't know?
Yes, because you don't never know what can happen.
And what about texting, one of the most favored forms of teen communication?
I'll send about maybe 100 and receive about maybe 100 every day.
Maybe 500 a day or more.
How many conversations can you carry on at any one time?
So many.
Do you talk on the phone too?
Me personally, no. I can't hold a conversation on the phone. It gets boring.
How much do you text?
I would say pretty much, because it's quicker than a phone and it's more efficient.
I text a lot. I text
like every two minutes. I text all the time.
How much do you text?
Occasionally 15 to 20 texts a day, and that's really it.
What do you text about?
Just about planning to hang out or something.
The teens we interviewed say they're aware of the dangers of texting and social media sites like Facebook.
Like cyberbullying and like people getting a hold of your Facebook profile and knowing exactly where you live.
Hacking pages. So I make sure I change my password once a month.
I don't like what people say on Facebook and the way they behave sometimes.
I've seen a lot of inappropriate pictures that girls my age have put on there, and I really don't like that.
It's very important that you watch what you put on Facebook and like photos and the things that you say.
And just how much should parents be involved in monitoring what their teenagers are doing? Does your mom monitor your Facebook account?
Yes, she monitors it 24/7. I think it's a good idea because she'll tell me, like, don't do that, and she'll make sure I'm being respectful and respecting myself.
Do your parents monitor your Facebook?
Yes, they both have Facebooks, and they both are friends with me, and so they check up on my Facebook a lot.
You could be on their wall seeing who they're talking to and what they're talking about, but when you go to their inboxes, it may be a invasion of privacy.
My dad has a Facebook and he requires me to be his friend.
Would you want them to check your inbox or your messages?
Not really, I would not like that.
Why not?
It's not like I'm hiding anything, but some parts of my life I like to keep private.
You just want to say stuff, so you use it to Facebook, and you don't want your mom to know sometimes. It's not necessarily bad information, but it's just a vent.
A lot of kids want to have their privacy as well as adults, so I think it's only fair that you should give them that much.
They should be able to trust their child sometimes and let them have a little privacy, but on the other hand, they need to be looking at their stuff too.
All of the teens admit to spending hours on the internet, going to various sites, and playing games. There's a lot to discuss when it comes to teenagers and social media. So what are some of the topics these teens would like to hear our guests talk about?
Kids need to be careful on what they put on there because it'll be on there forever.
How people taking like naked pictures, because it's people that's getting tagged in pictures on Facebook and girls are completely naked.
Talk about cyberbullying because it's a big issue that we're having in the internet.
How much they actually think kids should text or be on the internet.
Really, you can change the privacy settings, and so if they could go over things like that more, then I think it could make everyone a lot safer.
I would like to hear the guests speak about cyberbullying and maybe sexting or having inappropriate messages sent back and forth. Talk about the relationship between the parents and the children and having an open communication. I think they should talk about the danger of not knowing who's on the other side when you're talking to someone.
Tough issues, yes, and we plan to tackle them. We have a lot to talk about today. First, though, let's introduce our guests. Corey Claxton is the Project HEART coordinator for Safe Connections. HEART stands for Healthy Alternatives for Relationships Among Teens. John Gurgasev is a clinical social worker and therapist who deals with many issues facing young people and their families, including issues facing kids today and with this new social media. And also joining us is Shante Lampley, who is the Chief Deputy Juvenile Officer for the 22nd Judicial Circuit of Missouri. Shante manages the Child Protection Department for the St. Louis City Family Court, and we welcome you all to the issues. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You know, when I was listening to all those kids talking about their experiences in social media, I was thinking, gee, I don't get it. Is it my age?
No. There are many people on social media sites, grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles, so it has no limit on age.
I'm not into it too much personally. I'm assuming you all are, since you seem so well versed in it. Is it all positive from your perspective as an adult using social media?
I think a lot of times we focus on kids being the ones on there that aren't doing appropriate things, but you have an abundance of adults who are doing inappropriate things, and especially when they're friends with kids and they're setting a model of what they deem appropriate behavior, it's rolling down also. So kids are getting it from multiple places, whether it's from friends or family or their adult friends that they also have on the site.
What do you think, John? You know, when I was thinking about this earlier, I thought, gee, they didn't have social media when I was a teenager. And I was thinking, you know, if they did, I bet I would have gotten in trouble.
Well, I think that that's pretty easy to do. You know, adolescents are pretty impulsive anyway, and oftentimes they take on a different persona completely than really who they are. They might even say that they're older. They might post a different picture. It's pretty easy to be able to create somebody that you're really not. Excuse me. Also, because kids have an impulse control disorders a lot of times anyway, their whole perspective becomes pretty narrow and hyper-focused just on whatever activity that they're doing at the time. So they might, instead of thinking, oh, I need to make sure I don't write anything inappropriate, my mom might see her, my teacher, they might just be in the moment, they might be angry with somebody, they might be bullying somebody that somebody else targeted, and then they jumped on board as well. It's also been called a narcissistic tool in that kids are narcissistic anyway. They spend a lot of time looking in the mirror and making sure they look good, and it's the me generation, they want to be important. But also in just talking about themselves and how great they are and how wonderful they are, they extend to other kids on there whom they don't even know. So yes, it's a very risky behavior.
Corey and John, if you just tell me a little bit about what you do professionally and how that connects you to our topic today.
Yeah, no problem. I work at Safe Connections, which is a domestic violence, sexual assault, childhood incest counseling agency. And then through different services we offer at the agency, whether it be individual counseling, support services, crisis helpline. I'm the one who coordinates our education program. So Project HEART is our educational outreach program that goes out into schools, after school settings, teen pregnancy shelters, wherever kids may be. We go out and we talk to them about these issues, from healthy relationships to teen dating violence to the dangers of the internet, sexual harassment, rape, and sexual assault.
So you get an earful of this stuff.
Yes, we are engorged in it every single day.
Good word, engorged. John, how about you?
Well, I've worked in private practice for over 20 years and exclusively with teenagers and families. So it's important in my business to try and keep up with the trends, which are ever changing. But as social media has come up and is becoming a rapid kind of problem maker, we'll call it, because it is trickling into education, and also I think it's stunting socialization in children, and also with video games, etc. It's important that I know what's going on with the teenage trends.
Yeah. Shantae, your nieces and nephews, how young were they when they started this whole social media involvement?
Probably within the last year or two, and they are about 13 and 11.
You know, that almost surprises me because I almost think it might be younger. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I don't know if we have like 7-year-olds on Facebook necessarily, but I think we have 7-year-olds who know how to look up a YouTube video, who also know how to Google the pizza restaurant and not use the phone book. So they're much more savvy than we're probably giving them credit for, by all means.
Is part of the problem maybe that a lot of parents are like me and don't know a lot about it? Is that part of the problem?
That could be. Kids are very tech savvy, and you have no idea what they're doing. I mean, they're on the computer, but you don't have any idea that they're on these sites, what they're doing, who they're talking to, and all the things that they're exposed to. So out of sight, out of mind.
And it's a bit overwhelming. As a parent myself, luckily I've been in it, so I know what's going on, but at the same instance, as a parent where this technology has been rolled out as you're parenting, your kids are learning about it long before you do. And you're either trying to access them as the ones to teach you, or you're trying to figure it out on your own, and it can become overwhelming really quickly.
Yeah, John, and as a therapist, you must appreciate too, kids aren't necessarily telling parents everything they know about the technology.
It's like the old game of cops and robbers, you know, and as the cops get better, the robbers get even better.
All right, we've got a lot to talk about, and I want to know if we should be scared about this, but don't answer yet. We're talking about the dangers of the internet, and we'll continue right after this.
As parents, we have to set rules and boundaries and standards for our children, and that means we have to be involved in the social media in which they're involved.
Now, what if your daughter said, "Hey, Dad, I don't want you monitoring"?
I'm her dad. I pay for it. I'm going to have a say-so in this.
Well, you know, when you move out, you can have privacy. As long as you're under my house, you eat my food, you got to deal with my rules.
I keep an eye on the Facebook, but you know, my wife will look at the emails. She'll look at the text messages sent on the phone, and vigilant is the word that parents need to be.
I check their phone. If they're on Facebook, I say, "Who are you talking to?" and I look at the conversation. If they're sending emails, I will go through the emails, and they know this.
Anything you put on the computer, on the internet, it's there forever.
And that's going to impact upon their careers down the road. So you've really got to be careful what you're putting on there.
You need to monitor, you need to know passwords, you need to let them know you don't have any secrets from me. What can you do, what do you need to know that I can't know? What do you need to do that I can't know you're doing? If I can't know you're doing it, it's a secret. We don't have secrets. Not children from parents.
We're talking about the dangers of the internet today with our guests Corey Claxton, Dr. Shantae Lampley, and John Gergesef. And the question I posed before we took that break is, as a parent, should we be worried? Should we be, more than that, should we be frightened?
Yes. I think that many parents aren't aware of just who the friends are, who the children's friends are, and many of the people that they friend are not really who they say they are. Some may be much older, some may have other interests besides being their friend, and they meet up, or they could potentially meet up. So I think that when you talk about a child's safety, you should be concerned, even if there's nothing going on. Not necessarily that your child would engage in any of these things, but those that they're friending, we don't know what their interests are.
Right, because who's to say the 14-year-old guy talking to the 14-year-old girl, who's to say that 14-year-old guy really isn't me?
Right.
Or somebody else, right?
Exactly. And I think it's not just social media. I mean, social media obviously, but it's not just Facebook that we can focus on, because we've got gaming systems that they're playing on, and they're creating whole other worlds that they're immersing themselves in, and then they're playing with someone from Japan and someone from here, and they're interacting with people that when we were kids, if you couldn't get their phone number or run into them at the park, then you weren't interacting with them. But they're interacting on so many different levels that it would increase a parent's fear of just what exactly is out there and what they're being bombarded
Well,
with.
I like the point you make. When we were young, we talked to somebody to their face, or the most distant thing, I guess, would be on the phone. But it would seem to me, John, maybe you could address this, that when we're talking about the internet and the dangers of it, it's a lot of fantasy. Because you don't know who you're talking to, you don't know what's true or what's not true when you're talking to strangers who you can't see and who you've never met.
One of the biggest issues in adolescence is identity, trying to establish ourselves as people and who we are. So we'll oftentimes emulate people that we are fond of or that we look up to as actors and other family members. But as time's gone by, I think that fantasy through video games and just in general has become a bigger part of a child's life, and not fantasy with free drawing with a box of crayons, but more kind of imitation. And so if I can become someone who's more handsome, or a young woman who's more beautiful and more vivacious and all that, oftentimes they'll do that. They'll just take on another persona and portray themselves as that individual, even with a copied picture.
It doesn't sound healthy.
No, it's not healthy, and I think the boundaries in families are getting more and more broad as time goes on. You know, it gets back to knowing what your kids are doing. That old commercial about, do you know where your kids are? Well, yeah, sure, they're in the other room, but what are they really doing?
Right. Yeah. Do you have anything you'd like to share about your nieces and nephews? Have you talked to their parents, and what are their concerns, and have they noticed anything that particularly bothers them? What are their issues that they're having at home?
Well, I think it's a matter of parenting styles. Some parents don't want to upset their children by invading their privacy, so they would allow them to have their freedom to go ahead and surf these sites and friend all of these people. And my view on that is a little bit different. I think that parents, particularly parents of younger kids, you need to know what they're doing. So if I see a post for a young relative that comes on their page, I'm going to read what that post is, and then I'm going to go to the person that sent that message to see how old they are, to see where they live, because if he lives in Florida or she lives in Texas and you live in Illinois or Missouri, how do you know? You're 13 years old. How do you know this person? And many times kids, they block their settings so you can't read. So it's, I mean, that's a catch-22. If they don't, then you might have to have a conversation about who these people are. But that concerns me, that many parents are not really watching what their kids are doing. And I understand about the privacy thing, but you still need to make sure your kids are safe.
Well, that's a lot of work, too, as a parent, isn't it? I mean, you heard, when we heard about those kids, when you heard the number of texting or contacts they were having, if you're going to be checking out everyone that comes in, are you going to have time to go to the store?
I think it's, like Shantae was saying, it's a parenting style. When we were kids, your parents just had to answer the phone first, and they knew who was calling you, and they wrote it down, and you took a message. And nowadays, we're having to do things a little differently. And kids ask me all the time, well, how much can my parents know? And I'm like, are they paying the bill? Do you still live at their house? Then they're required to know that. That's part of living in someone's house. That's part of being a child. And a lot of kids will tell you, although they feel like it's an invasion of privacy, there's still a certain form of structure that they like to have. It's nice to have my parents ask me, I don't know how to work Facebook, so let's sit down and look at yours and see how this works out. And kids are so excited to tell you how to do things. They're telling me about video games all the time, but I'm like, wait, they come with headsets? And they're like, yeah, and you talk to people, and they want to tell you. They're a wealth of information, but we get overwhelmed with asking them. And like Shantae's saying, you're like, I don't want to invade their privacy, and I still want to, and they're going to have privacy. They're going to get it in other ways.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because while you do want to monitor everything, and John, maybe this is a good question for you as a therapist, privacy is important, right? Even for a kid, they have to feel like they have some, don't they?
Yeah, I think they do. I also think it depends on the maturity level of the child as well, and as well as the child's overall level of functioning. You know, if it's a young woman or a young man and they're doing well in school, they're open with their parents, they're communicative, that's one thing. But at the same time, kids who are not doing anything wrong should not have any problem letting their parents know what their passwords are for their email or for their Facebook accounts. They also should be able to surrender their telephone at any time so the parents can check the text messages. And that's not to say because they might do 20,000 text messages a month that it's all a whole bunch of different kids, because it's probably not. It's probably just that center core of the group. But I think it's important that and I believe agree with Corey, that it's important that we know who our kids are associating with. Mm-hmm. So it's not inappropriate for a parent to say, well, you know, I'd like to look at your messages once in a while, or I need access to that, or who is this name on here? I don't know who this child is.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I always use the reference, I learned it in a training, but always using the reference of, you don't give a 16-year-old a brand new car and the keys and go, okay, drive off, and I hope everything works out the way it's supposed to.
When we come back, maybe we can discuss a little bit more about some advice we can give parents on how to maybe keep this thing under control. We're talking about the dangers of the internet. We'll be back right after this.
They're children. You know, who knows who's out there? I don't trust anybody with my daughters.
For their protection, I absolutely go through their social media.
It's my responsibility to protect them until they're old enough to make their own decisions.
Nothing's off limits.
So you're protecting your child by seeing where they're going, who they're talking to, and it's a parent's right and responsibility to monitor that, because the children are their responsibility.
As a parent, you cannot be afraid to be involved in your children's lives. If total strangers are trying to be involved in their lives, you've got to do your part, and you've got to make sure that you're in there. And you've got to leave the door open that if something happens or something's questionable or something that you've expressed to them isn't quite right happens, that they can come and talk to you about it.
As an adult, that's your responsibility.
It's not only for their safety, but it's also for their future. You know, it's just, there's a lot to stay on top of. You know, we're to keep a strict eye. We want to protect those girls.
When kids are little, or when they're in the young adult age, the adolescent age, they're very, very easy to manipulate. And they don't know that, but you do. It's like looking through a fence, a hole in a fence. I'm looking through the hole in the fence like this. You're looking through the hole in the fence like that. So you can't see what the world is about. I know what the world is about, and it's my job to protect you.
This is The Issues, and we're talking about the dangers of the internet. And in our final segment, maybe we should talk to parents about what they can do. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit. Maybe a lot of parents don't know what's going on. So what's the answer? Do you not let kids have a computer in their own room with the door shut? Do you make sure it's out in the family room by the TV? Are there rules for your nieces and nephews?
I don't think there are very many rules. And I think it depends on, again, like John said, it depends on the maturity level of the child. But I think that you could probably have a conversation with your kids first and talk about your concerns, particularly if they haven't gotten on a social media site yet. It's always great to start in the beginning, start off fresh, rather than coming in after they've been on it for 3 or 4 years and saying, now I want to, you know.
Maybe that's the key, right?
Yeah, start early. But as far as, you know, where they have their computers and things like that, it depends on the child, I think.
Yeah, but when you're talking about judging the maturity of the child, which I think is an excellent point, you've got to be like a smart, involved parent to make the right call. And let's face it, some parents are better than others.
Well, and it's also the maturity level of the parent. Also, is this parent more focused on being a parent, or are we more focused on being the friend of the child in the cool house where everyone wants to come and hang out? And I think that's going to play into, like Shantae's talking about, the maturity of the child too. Because, I mean, kids they know what they can and can't get away with.
Yeah, and you know, we've talked about bullying and stuff, and as a therapist, John, I'd like to hear your thoughts. The psychological effect that cyberbullying and harassment can have on a kid.
Well, obviously it can be very devastating, and it can lead to suicide many times. But I think Corey had been talking earlier about that sometimes I don't think kids really connect the reality of their activities on the internet or Facebook with the reality at school or the people that they're really hurting. kids are cruel anyway, and they'll say some very, very, very mean things to other children and then retract it when they're confronted. But at the same time, a lot of their behaviors are so impulsive and so hyper-focused that I don't think they really think ahead for what they're doing. So if they target one kid, some of the other ones just kind of follow the leader, jump on the bandwagon and bully the same kid, and they all laugh about it, not really knowing the implications and the depth of how they could really hurt somebody.
Right, and picking up what you say, isn't it true that when you're young, at our age, we're very concerned and we care about our reputation, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not so sure if kids think about their reputations and their future reputations.
And I think, yeah, that's a very valid point, because kids will get in this very two-sided mindset where this is who I am online and this is who I am in real life. And when those start to intermingle, and now people are like, wait a minute, they find themselves in this awkward water of, oh, which one am I going to be? And it has future repercussions on jobs, on college that you get into, and things like this. I mean, people are looking at them all the time.
And what about these privacy settings?
You can.
I mean, does that do the trick?
I don't think always.
Not always.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I think it's interesting to note, too, if you jump around from site to site, it will change the HTTP, which means sometimes you can really have your information protected, but other times if you go to another site and you protect it, it's a more open site. So it's very deceptive, and you think you're on a secure and safe site, but you're really not.
Right.
And when you're bullying, too, I almost wonder if the internet maybe encourages people to be bullies. And what I mean by that is it's a lot easier to be a bully if someone doesn't know who you are.
Well, and it's much easier to make a comment, a hurtful comment to someone, and not see their physical reaction to what I just said.
Right.
So a text message, a Facebook message, a post where I've tagged everyone in my class, I'm not seeing that person's physical reaction to what I'm doing.
John, would you say something about the, I believe this is something that you know about, the Megan Meier case and the legislation that came as a result of that?
Well, and her mom's done a tremendous amount of work, and she's out there Facebooking as well and campaigning to make people more accountable for their actions. You know, with the internet, there's still difficulties with taxing, but still it's some kind of accountability for behavior. So as time goes on, more and more laws will be developed, like the Megan Meier law, which do make people accountable for their behavior, whether it's in cyberspace or on the playground.
And what about sexting, if I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
I mean, is that even illegal? I don't even know.
Sexting, so the term is what we use in common day language. It's what everyone's kind of come to know, the misnomer. Personally, I feel like sexting like glamorizes it, like, ooh, I'm sexting.
Right.
Instead of what you're really doing is if you're under the age of 17, you're like sending pornography pictures of yourself and of children and of things like this. And when you give it to kids that way, kids are like, whoa, that's not what I'm into, that's not what I'm trying to do. And they look at it very differently if we start labeling exactly what it is. And it's inappropriate pictures of children. Whether you're 16 or you're 5, it's still inappropriate.
So the bottom line is what? What would, just briefly, what would your advice be to parents out there?
To parents, talk to your children, know what they're doing. You may not know every detail, but let them know that you are concerned and that you are watching what they're doing.
And Corey, advice for kids?
Your digital reputation will eventually meet up with your real life one.
And John, how do you, I mean, the internet can be a great, wonderful thing.
Well, I think that's a very focal point. You know, the internet is a tool, and it can be a very valuable tool, but like anything, it can be abused.
We'll have to leave it at that. We're out of time, but I want to thank you all for shedding some light on a topic that is very complicated, I think, for a lot of people, and I think you've helped a lot of us understand that. Teenagers, be careful, and be safe, and be vigilant, right? And parents, take charge and get involved. Thanks for joining us today for The Issues. I'm Steve Potter. See you next time. Bye.